Welcome everybody to regularly scheduled May 4th Downtown Sarasota Condominium Association meeting. Welcome everybody. I think we have 8 of our 11 board members. Jamie's going to be a little bit late, and Judy and Roger are in Europe, so they're taking the day off. So let me declare a quorum with all of those here. First order of business is the secretary's report. Judy is not here. We had attached the minutes of both the organizing board meeting and the regular board meeting of April 6th. Anybody have any corrections, comments, concerns?
I don't know what other people got, but I just realized looking at this, I got minutes for the annual members meeting, not the organizing meeting.
Okay.
So I don't know if everybody's package only had annual members meeting, which we will approve the next annual members meeting.
Okay.
And there is no, as far as I know, organizational minutes to approve.
Okay.
So we may want to defer that to the next meeting and send that out and only do the meeting minutes from April 6th.
Okay. Does that work for everyone?
They were belatedly sent out in the resend of the board packet later this afternoon.
Oh, this afternoon?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't.
It wasn't till, well, I caught it last night, just that as I was kind of going through that, and
All
I
right.
realized. So
Well, if other people have had a chance and you can get a vote for it, go ahead, go for it.
I think it's rather.
I'll put it up on the screen if you want to do a quick share.
Okay.
So simply list the attendees and proxies, and this was the basically the election of, once the board was seated by the members, then this is the organizing meeting where we elected the officers. I'll make a motion to accept these minutes of the organizing meeting of March 24th.
Second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's accept those.
And then we have the minutes of April 6th, so last month's regular meeting.
Yes.
Move approval of the April 6th meeting minutes.
Second.
Okay, everybody okay? Aye. Right, okay. Moving along, treasurer's report. Clark, what do you have for us?
In our Sable Palm account, we have $15,676.43.
Good.
This is before we pay our credit card for some of the past expenses.
Okay, but some of our sponsorships, some of those funds have come in. I think, pretty much
Yes.
everything.
Yeah.
Is coming. Okay. Clark?
15,676.43.
Okay, and then we're gonna have our event coming up next week. It's gonna be
Yeah.
some, so because we have a little bit of a balance. Okay. Next item is our guest speaker, and Steve Cover, and I think it's just been slightly over 5 years, right, Steve? I think it was in February, March, April. Okay, so we're just into 5 years, and what a changed world we are living in compared to 5 years ago, and even 5 months ago. It seems like things are so the critical importance of planning. You know that I try and track population estimates and new construction, and try and look at a lot of data. So hope that that's helpful. I think it's really timely that you're here. We did make a little bit of a plan change, given some of the comp plan changes you're recommending. Wanted to give you an opportunity to speak with us and have some constructive questions along the way. So I've asked you, would you please, we've had speakers in the past, I won't name names, but we didn't get to the meat of the downtown things because the matters were covered. So if you could focus as much as possible on areas of downtown interest, we sure appreciate it. So with that said, okay, with that said, Steve, would you take it away?
Okay, great. If we get the, get the slides up. As you're aware, we gave a presentation to the planning board April 13th, and these are comprehensive plan amendments. Now, keep in mind there are two key elements to the work that we do. One is the comprehensive plan, which is the long range plan that really sets the goals and objectives for the city. And then the zoning is the implementation component of it. So why don't we jump into the next slide here. Yeah, and what we're dealing with are a couple of very serious issues. First, attainable housing, which I will give a brief presentation on, and then making changes to two comprehensive plan chapters, the housing chapter and the future land use chapter. And with these revisions, we're looking at three areas. We're looking at commercial centers, which does not include the downtown area, but outside the downtown. Commercial corridors, which are our main roadways, such as 41, 301, Fruitville, and others. And then downtown Sarasota, which you're, I think, most interested in today. And this is one thing that I think everybody really needs to be aware of, because this is a serious issue in Sarasota. Over the past year, we've seen in our area the fastest rent increases in the country at 44%. And the average rent for a one-bedroom apartment went for $1,000 a month in 2018, all the way to, actually it's over $2,500 now. And we'll show you a chart of that. Next slide. Yeah, a couple of areas which have grown substantially just in the last 3 years are those households that are cost burdened for more, that they're spending more than 30% of their income on housing, and the severely cost burdened more than 50%. And obviously someone who's used to paying $1,000 or $1,200 a month and a couple of years later is paying $2,500, that kicks them, that most likely kicks them into the severely cost burdened population. Next. And this is a chart that really kind of spells it out very clearly. Not including utilities, the average median rent for a one-bedroom apartment is $2,540. And then if you look down, for what families or individual families can afford, including utilities, a family of four that's making almost $100,000 a year can really only afford a maximum rent of $2,316. So what this is saying is that a family of four that's making almost $100,000 here in the city is going to have a tough time finding a one-bedroom apartment, much less a two-bedroom apartment or more. Next slide. And this is the chart that we always use. These are the average median income rates, 30% all the way up to 120%. The 100% is the $77,200. It's saying that a family of four can really only afford $1,930, and even at 120%, it's that 92.6 number. This is the chart we use to estimate what families can afford, individuals or families can afford. And to give you an idea, that the 92,640, if you have two wage earners in that family, that's $23 an hour that they're making, with their income for each one. Next slide.
Each or jointly?
Each. Okay, next. One of the things in this too is, a lot of you are familiar, we had a transportation master plan that was accepted by the commission. A lot of this relates to this. This is one of the reasons why we did this. We wanted to lay the groundwork for different kinds of transportation options in the city. If we go to the next slide. couple things we're doing here. One is the portion on the left. If you have a really good transit system, it really provides a lot of opportunities for walk, bike, take the trolley, which everyone knows is doing really well. Bike share, scooter share, but a lot is focused on these main corridors, which is what a lot of our emphasis is on. And on complete streets, I do want to say that eventually, when we come back to the commission with zoning text amendments, we're already working on, and this is for downtown, we're already working on whatever happens downtown, a plan for every street and every sidewalk in the downtown area. What the width needs to be to accommodate landscaping, circulation, potentially maybe some outdoor dining, so that if in the future, as new development takes place, we're going to make sure we at least have enough right-of-way and room to build the proper width sidewalk. We can't do any of this without taking a look at what's happening at the street level. And that's really very important. Next slide. Yeah, and this was just all the projects that were recommended in the master plan. And as you can see, a lot of them are right on these major corridors in downtown, close to those areas. Next. And so the overview changes the housing chapter, future land use chapter. We'll touch on, and like I said before, the comprehensive plan is general policies, long-term vision. The comprehensive policies are then implemented by the zoning. And with this effort, we're trying to ensure a consistency between the comprehensive plan and the zoning code, and actually presenting overview of potential comprehensive plan changes. Slide. One of the things we have is in our comprehensive plan is that attainable housing is identified as any housing that's 60% to 120% AMI. And so, but what we're missing is anything below 60%. And so we're changing the wording in the comprehensive plan so that attainable housing includes anything from 1% to 120%. We don't want to be excluding those who are below the 60% level. Next slide. And one of the key strategies is adding a new attainable housing density bonus action strategy, where we will identify a base density, which basically is what's currently in the code. In the downtown area, downtown core, for example, it's 50 units per acre. That would be the base density. And then what we're planning to do is add or expand an existing strategy to read incentives for attainable housing, recognizing the importance of housing, the redevelopment of the downtown and other areas of the city. Consider incentives including greater residential density for development that provides attainable units within the downtown mixed-use centers and mixed-use corridors. So what we're saying is above that base density, we're looking to recommend additional density if they provide attainable housing. Next slide. And also part of this is not downtown, but this is part of our effort of creating a missing middle overlay in the Park East District, which is east of 301. It's really to provide different kinds of housing types that don't even exist and aren't even available today for the most part, such as duplexes, fourplexes, eightplexes, cottage courts, and small multifamily structures. Next slide. And then these corridors, we're looking to create a new urban mixed-use virtual land use map. This is in the corridors. This is not downtown. And once again, we're looking to create more opportunities to provide residential along the corridors, which then can use our transit options, different transit options, to be able to ride transit to work. And then, like I said, the base density, here's the definition of what base density is. And this would be for all of downtown and then those mixed-use corridors and commercial sites. And then to add a new strategy to incentivize the construction of attainable housing units by allowing for administrative review of site plan applications. This was a recommendation that was made by several affordable housing reports that the city adopted. And so this is an additional incentive for those who, for providing attainable housing in future projects. Commercial centers, I'll just touch on this briefly. We're looking at focusing on those commercial centers which really aren't doing that well, are pretty much large parking lots with some activity. We'd like those to potentially be future transit-oriented development nodes where you would have commercial, residential, would have easy access to transit. And this just spells out some of the recommendations in the affordable housing incentive strategy that we're actually proposing in this comprehensive plan change.
There's no difference between affordable housing and attainable, right?
Well, attainable housing is the term we use in our comprehensive plan that we want to stick to. And by changing the definition to basically making it 1% to 120% includes everything, you know, all ranges. This very quickly, we'll go through. This map here identifies the properties and the areas we are looking at for the commercial corridor evaluation. The next slide shows the actual land. That changes, bright green being those corridor areas where we're looking to that urban mixed use. And then if you look,
Hey, folks, those of you on Zoom, please be on mute.
then if you look at the downtown area, which basically is this area right here, we are not proposing to change the future land uses in downtown at all. Those are going to remain the same. Next slide. Let's get through these because these are just individual properties. Yeah, keep going. Yeah, next slide. And then in the downtown area, we've got, like I said, we've got these are your existing land use classifications. And to incentivize attainable housing in the downtown area, we're providing an opportunity to have greater residential density above that base density, only if they're providing attainable housing. If it's all market rate, it'll be 50 units per acre.
Excuse me, I didn't hear you.
Yeah.
Full market rate, what?
Yeah, if you do not provide attainable housing, let's say in the downtown area, it's only to be 50 units per acre. If you provide attainable housing, you'll be able to provide additional density.
And then additional density been identified?
Not yet, but I think we're really going to have to up it to really incentivize providing attainable housing downtown. That'll be determined later when we're coming through with the zoning text amendments.
Would that attainable housing be permanent?
It will be at least 30 years to permit. Right.
Does that mean that?
Again, folks, may I ask, this is our board meeting. We'll have questions at the
Sure.
at the
Sorry.
end, and maybe there'll be, I don't mean to be rude, but let Steve get through this and then we'll try and handle questions appropriately. Thank you.
And then the last bullet is consistent with the other future land use classifications, removing the height limitations in the comprehensive plan. Now, what does that mean? Like what we did with our primary Bridge Street map, it was both in the comprehensive plan and in the zoning code. And so we took it out of the comprehensive plan because it was already in the zoning code. It's the same situation we have here, is that we're trying to clean up our comprehensive plan. In terms of height, the zoning regulations are still in place. So if someone comes in, let's say this comprehensive plan change is adopted by the commission, the height limits that you have right now in the zoning code are still in place. And that's what we'll do. And then this is the process we're going through right now. So we've already presented to the planning board on April 13th. They recommended approval of these changes. We're going to the commission on May 16. Now that is only to transmit what we're proposing to the state for review. It's not a final approval of what we're presenting. It's only to transmit it to the state, because whenever you make comprehensive plan changes like what we're proposing, has to be reviewed by the state before it comes back for a final vote. So, and then the state would review it during the summer as to when it'll get back. That's really kind of hard to nail down. But then when it comes back, then it will, and if the state has no problems with it, then the commission would then vote on the comprehensive plan changes. And most likely that was going to be late summer, August, September, somewhere in that time frame. That's our presentation. Certainly open for questions.
Okay. Listen, our protocol is we start with the board members, and then if we, depending on time and so forth, we certainly welcome member residents. Ken, I'm going to call on Ken first because of his role as a former commissioner and his knowledge about this. So, can you kick off?
Sure. Steve, a question has come up about community workshops with respect to comp plan changes. Can you tell us what the requirements are with respect to community workshops and comp plan changes, not zoning text amendments, but comp plan changes?
Well, they do require community workshops. I think David has the detailed information.
Yeah, I'm David Smith with Planning. Introduce myself. The future land use map changes do require a community workshop if we're going to change the land use on a property. I don't think the text changes do require a community workshop. And we did hold a community workshop on March 24th. We sent out either 5,400 or 5,800 notices. One thing I did was about a week prior, I did send an email to David with those notices that we were going to be talking about some changes to the downtown land use classification as well, text changes. I'm not sure if that got disseminated or not, but we did hold that workshop. We had a number of people did attend. I think there were about 30 or 40, 50 people who attended and asked a lot of questions. But we did cover both the urban mixed use land use classes. We did talk about the downtown potential text changes and missing middle and a few other things. So, but yeah, on the future land use map changes, we did notify everybody who their land use is potentially changing.
Yeah, and one thing I'd like to add, this really kind of covers a lot of this, is that April of last year, we gave a presentation to the commission on some ideas, and they voted to they gave us permission to move forward with these ideas. We also presented them in February in much greater detail. I mean, much of what you're seeing here, and the commission gave us the green light to move forward with putting the comprehensive changes in more detailed form, and so that's what we're doing. So at both times, the commission was authorizing us and requesting that we move forward with. So make that clear.
Yeah, the important part is show up May 16th and let the commission know your thoughts, if you're in support or something that you're not happy with, and public input. And there would be an adoption stage public hearing later in the year, probably as well. So there's at least 2 more hearings for the comp plan part, and then if it does get approved, then there's the zoning part next year.
Yeah, the zoning text amendments, if we do get authorization to move forward with this, that's not going to happen until next year. And we really don't know. That's when we're really getting down to the details. There's going to be plenty of opportunity for public input and suggestions before we finalize that.
But removing the density.
Someone needs to mute. It's very hard. They may be outside, but there's noise, background noise. If somebody could mute themselves.
The point you're trying to make, I think, with respect to height, is that there's no proposed height limit changes at this point in either the comp plan or the zoning text amendments, the zoning text or zoning code.
Yeah, the zoning code already has the height regulations.
Right.
You know, and right now, the bayfront allows buildings up to 18 stories. And I can tell you right now, we are not changing that at all. That is staying the same. If you look at that, if you look at how our zoning and our city's been laid out, it's kind of backwards. We have the tall buildings along the water, and shorter buildings behind. That's what we have to work with. And keep in mind too, that then the downtown core, which is basically behind the bayfront, the height cap is 10 stories. So keep in mind that if we do nothing, the city could be built out with 10-story buildings throughout the entire by right. So, and then you have downtown edge, which is 5 stories. And you have takers down the different categories. That's what we have right now.
I would like to point out that the downtown, we're talking about future land use categories, downtown core, downtown bayfront, called urban edge and urban neighborhood. Those 4 are the only land use classifications in the comprehensive plan that have height limits in them. Trying to make the land use classifications consistent with the others, like a multiple family, moderate density, medium density, single family. There's no height limits in the comprehensive plan on those land uses. We'd like to have all the land use classifications similar and leave it up to the zoning code then to determine the maximum building height. There is a coastal islands overlay. Carl Shaw reminded me of that the other week. That's not in a land use classification. That's not being touched. That's out on the barrier islands.
After your former planning board person, you know 50 times more about this and your questions.
Yeah, and Steve, I'm glad you brought up the April 19, 2021 meeting where you presented, and in there were 6 or 7 slides where you presented your analysis of height limits in other cities. St. Pete, Fort Myers has 36-story condos right on the waterfront there. So the public was made aware that the planning department was considering changes that would raise the height limits. And you make a good point, probably legally standing, the requirements for making changes to the comp plan only require a community workshop if you're making a change to the future land use map. And you're very correct. You didn't make any changes to the future land use map for the downtown. However, you told us in April a year ago that you were going to be making changes to building height limits, and here's all these examples. And so we were waiting for that to come through. No engagement had been made. So my question really is, when you held a community workshop on March 24th, did you happen to look at the attendees, the 30-odd attendees? I did. I didn't find anyone with a downtown address that lived in the downtown zone. The reason is they were not notified that there was going to be any change in this comp plan amendment to remove building height limits. And so while legally you probably didn't have to hold a community workshop for changing the text, if you're holding a community workshop, why weren't we notified? The notices that went out said nothing about text. It wasn't until the week before the April 13th planning board meeting that we saw in there in the description that there was going to be removing duplicative regulatory text. That was the first public notice that this change was coming about. So my question is, why? Especially when a year ago you promised more public input and the commissioners asked you directly if you were going to seek that public input from the affected neighborhoods, including downtown, prior to submitting it to the planning board. That was your commitment, and we're just wondering.
And that's what we did. That's what we did. And there were downtown people.
The community workshop.
The workshop there were. So I don't know how you circulated the information.
We did because there was no notice of any text changes.
I disagree.
If you said that there was some added information, you look at the legal notice that was sent out, there's no mention of anything about the downtown zones in that. So we're left here. So is that what you consider to be fair public input to this plan?
To be honest with you, I disagree.
So how's that? So there's not been public input
But
from downtown residents?
But do you not think a public workshop, let's see, get a planning board hearing, we have another commission hearing, we got 2 more commission hearings, if it goes forward to 2 more, does that not give you, I mean, let's say you didn't know about which, we'll say, but do you think that's not enough public input?
And the preference is to have more people come and speak at the city commission meeting. And every 20 people, the other hour of commission time and staff time. So that's preferred as opposed to dealing with it in more detail in a workshop. That's the choice. So I understand your position. Thank you very much for explaining that.
Like I said, I disagree.
Other comments, questions?
I think I just, mine is probably more of a detailed one, but when you're looking at density and the 50 units, and then adding 50 plus units will be allowed if there's more attainable housing. I think one of the things that is a concern that I've heard is, how does that work? When you figure, let's just take an example. Let's take Baso. It's going in right now. You have a developer, whatever the height is on that building, they decide they're going to build up higher because they're going to increase their density, and in order to do that, they're going to be able to increase their height limit. They're going to put attainable housing, more affordable housing, wherever in the building. How do you control that? How do you control a person who purchases a unit for a, let's say, $200,000, and they live in that unit, and then they know that they can sell that and turn around and sell that for $750,000 to $1 million. How is that controlled, and how do you, where I guess the devil is in the details on some of this. It's good to hear and good to see, but how do you control that?
Well, first of all, as when the project's going through, they're going to have to have a certain number of, and we're probably going to break it down into 3 categories like we did in the Rosemary District. Basically, a third at 100 to 120%, a third 80 to 100, and a third 80 or below. And so that's what we're thinking right now. First, that being some text. Then they have to provide, not only in their plans, but they have to provide that documentation. They give us yearly reports. Our Office of Housing and Development will be tracking that. They will not be able to sell a unit, let's say that was bought at $200,000 for $700,000 this year. They will not be allowed to do that.
So
and it's the same with rents. They will not be able to raise the rent from, let's say, 1,200 to 25.
You're talking about a developer, or the owner who just purchased? Because there's a big difference there.
Actually, it's both. I mean, if the developer still keeps the control of the project itself, we will be tracking that, but the owners will not be able to do that. But we'll set up a tracking system. We did this in Arlington, Virginia. It's really pretty easy to track.
Right, but how does that work in a market like this? How do you prevent someone who is, purchase a condo and you're struggling and you have this chance to turn around and make a profit? How do you prevent that once it's after the sale?
There's got to be an agreement that's recorded with the clerk's office, almost like a deed restriction that says, they can only grow it a certain amount every year, and it's got to remain attainable for that 30-year period. So there's legally enforceable. So.
And that would be an agreement with, if it's a purchase, would be an agreement with that buyer. If it's a rental property, it would be
I don't see anyone to raise my hand. In response to that, in affordable housing situations, at least in New Jersey, there is, yes.
Sorry, this is open to board questions at the moment.
Oh, I apologize. I was just going to follow up on what she was saying about how it's restricted, and I was just going to share how it's done in other areas. That's fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Just a question, and it's a convoluted question because I don't understand all the terminology. But if I understand it correctly, the reason for removing the height restriction from the comprehensive plan is to conform the language between that and the planning document, the zoning document. I guess my question is, what is currently in the comprehensive plan? What is currently in the zoning plan? And would what was changed in the planning, in the comprehensive plan, to make these things conform wouldn't the comprehensive plan require the 18-story limit?
Oh, let me talk a little bit about that. First of all, why it was in the comprehensive plan. Back in 2000, 2001, when Andres Dewani came to town, did his downtown master plan and all the charrettes, he gave us a plan and a downtown master plan and a smart code, his draft zoning code. It had 18 stories, 10 stories, 5 stories in it. Now, I drafted a land use classification that was going to go into the comprehensive plan to implement this. In my first draft or two, I did not have any height limits in it. I was told by my supervisor at the time, we need to put those building heights in there because we don't know if the city commission will continue with those height limits that Mr. Dewani had proposed. So I ended up drafting this land use classification that was adopted in 2001, 2003. There was a challenge and it had a table that says bayfront 18 stories, core 10 stories, and so on. So it was put in there because staff was concerned that in between the time the comp plan was adopted and several years later when the zoning code was adopted, that perhaps there was going to be a change of heart, change of ideas. So we put in the comprehensive plan at that time. Then in 2007, 2008, the city commission told me they didn't want just one land use classification downtown. They wanted to divide it into 3. So core, edge, and bayfront were divided into 3 land use classifications. I kept those heights in there. Could have written it out at that time. Maybe no one said anything. I kept it in there. But it's in the zoning code. And when people go to develop, the development services staff, and they review things, they don't look at the comp plan, they look at the zoning.
Okay, just still not quite clear. What does the comprehensive plan now have with respect to building heights that would change?
The downtown bayfront core, edge, and neighborhood, where it says maximum height is 50 or 18 and 10, that would be stricken out and removed. It's
So
just
how
one
does that-
sentence.
How
on
does
each.
that comport with the zoning document, which has those restrictions? I thought the whole point of the exercise was to make them conform to one another. So if you take it out of one, you're actually doing the opposite of conforming.
We're getting rid of the duplication because these are the only land use classes that have the height limits, but they still be in the zoning code. So, and there's a few other things we're doing in this plan amendment, getting rid of duplication as well.
First of all, I was about a community workshop and didn't pass it along. My eyes glaze over on some of this stuff. Let me just talk from a 30,000-foot view. This is critically important to downtown residences when we talk about height, right? And so, in my opinion, without being hyperbolic about it, it's kind of messing with the soul of our city, right? We aren't St. Pete, we aren't Fort Myers, and we probably want to stay that way. Now, the question is, what's reasonable? And talking about heights without talking about setbacks, without talking about staircasing, to me is kind of goofy. And I just, am I to understand the cut to the chase here? If it's in the comp plan and it gets changed, it requires a super majority, 4-1 vote. If it's zoning text change, it's 3-2. So some of us would say that it's in the Constitution, shall we say, and it requires 4-1. That's maybe a good thing. But others would say it doesn't provide enough flexibility and gridlocks getting things done. Can you respond to that?
Well, when we packaged everything into this one plan amendment, and the supermajority vote is a requirement for changing future land use classifications, that urban mixed use classification we're coming up with, or some of the other few land use changes, or if you're increasing the density or intensity of land use classification. I don't think removing the height is actually increasing the density or intensity. If we doing it all separately, it may have just been a 3-2 vote, but we were packaging everything together like this to be and it does require a majority vote the way it's being packaged. And I'd have to talk to our attorney on that, but my opinion is if we did it all separately, probably would just be a 3-2 vote on that.
I'm not sure I'm following. Peter, can you argue? No, again, and we don't have a lot of time. But the operative point is we've got a lot of folks concerned about this. One of the things that I recommended is 3D modeling. Right? So if there's a way to help us visualize it, lay people visualize some of these changes. I would echo what Patrick says. I don't feel there's been enough engagement. I think you folks know how active I am at meetings and things like that. I'm also a rookie at this, understanding this stuff and running this board. But I can tell you there's a sincere interest of our board on engaging with you in constructive discussion, whether it be on tree stuff or whatever we get involved in. I'd like to feel that DSCA has been a pretty balanced type organization. I'd like to continue that, but we need more dialogue with you.
Yeah, let me address this whole height thing, because it's really blown out of proportion, to be honest with you. You know, we've gotten a lot of inquiries as well about height and what we're thinking. And keep in mind, this is ultimately a commission decision. It's not our decision. But, you know, one of the things that's been very clear, we have talked to a lot of people about who, you know, what would incentivize builders, developers, attainable housing developers to build attainable housing. And there were three things, and actually these were spelled out in some of our housing reports. And one is increased density, two, administrative review, and three, additional height. And so we asked them, okay, height, what are you talking about height-wise? You know, in terms, they said, well, in downtown, maybe a couple of stories. Okay, so at this point, you know, you know, we're interested in getting attainable housing downtown in our city. It's absolutely critical. You know, when you have employers talking to us saying, I actually had to open up, this was an architect, actually had to open up an office in Tampa where 3/4 of my employees are located because they couldn't afford to live and work here in Sarasota. That's a problem. You know, and you see it in restaurants. The hospital is saying we need attainable housing. You know, we're hearing from everyone. So at least preliminarily, and we think this is probably a good idea, is that, like I said, the bayfront, we're not changing that at all. That's going to stay at 18. Downtown core, okay, what's the incentive we need to get more attainable housing downtown? Probably a couple stories, 2 to 3 stories max. The downtown edge, where the maximum height is 5, maybe 1 to 2 extra stories there. So for downtown, that's what we're thinking. That's what we, and that's.
Yeah, my question is, you get before the commission and they say, well, Steve, 2 more stories is okay. What about 8 more stories? And they begin to.
I mean, that's their decision. That's not ours. I mean, our recommendation is like what they just told us.
Right,
So
and that-
we're going to say the same thing.
Yeah, okay, that would be a concern.
So given that David just mentioned, and from the residents' point of view, I think when you make a change and you consolidate things, the residents are much more comfortable if you maintain the change towards the conservative end. So if you have a choice between 3-2 and 4-1, you change things to go to the 4-1, not to go to the 3-2. That's how the residents would like to see it. Too many times the residents have been involved in community input at these workshops. Everybody agrees on something and the developer starts the development and goes in and changes that development. We see downtown right now that we were going to have townhouses associated with apartment buildings and that was going to be affordable. And all of a sudden, all of that was let go and they built a structure without any attainable housing in it at all. So the residents would like to see the more conservative approval than the less conservative. That's just my
Listen, I'm afraid we're out of time. Is there any one last Question of a board member, any board members?
I would just quickly follow. And Steve, I fully respect your goal here of doing like you did in the Rosemary, of only allowing a couple stories for that. But if you recall, the committee proposal was to include community workshops, even not public hearings, but just community workshops. That got stripped out, never got added back into anything. I don't see that on the table here. And we are sitting here having sat in business meetings with developers who are talking about their plans to come forward for 18 or 36 stories. And they would simply do a ZTA that requires 3 commissioners to approve it once this is taken out of the comp plan. Is that not correct?
We're not proposing 36.
No, I know you are not, but what is to prevent a developer from coming forward with their own ZTA on their own property?
They can do that, they can do that now.
Well,
It would require a change. It would have for Q1 on comp plan.
first of all,
That is
private entities not allowed to file zoning text amendment. They have to get,
Excuse me. I-
basically to get the city commission to say, yes, go ahead and
Right.
file it, or staff could do it, but I'm not doing it for
I wanna-
36.
yeah, that is a
Yeah.
legitimate concern because of what's actually happening today in the market today and discussions with developers today. This is not future fear factor. This is absolute happening today. So,
But you've heard from us.
yes, thank you.
Yeah, and we appreciate that. Yeah, and we understand what you're thinking.
We're not
concerned.
proposing Sears
Right.
Tower, Chicago, New York. We're not.
All right. Well, listen, I'm gonna have to, in the interest of time, we're just gonna run over already, but we certainly appreciate you coming. You know, I think our concerns, we're gonna be talking about this, and we certainly are gonna probably have input on the 16th or before. So thanks for coming. We
Yeah,
appreciate it.
absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks.
You're welcome to stay and hear the rest of our. interaction.
Nobody has ever.
We- yeah.
I gotta meet my wife.
For some reason.
After ending year dinner session.
Thanks, so thanks. We'll include it in our updates.
Yeah.
Slides.
Sure will.
Thanks for being with us.
All right, thank you. Okay. Moving along. Jamie's arrived, good. I was hoping Jamie would arrive before we started the next thing. Yes. Let's talk about what we just heard and comments. Observations, suggestions, Ken?
Well, there are a couple of things that bother me about what I'm sensing are our objections to the removal of the height restrictions in the comp plan. And what I just heard from David and Steve is that the consistency is not between the comp plan and the zoning text. The consistency is between the future land use definitions within the comp plan. There are only 4 that contain height restrictions in them. The rest of them do not. So that's why he's saying we want consistency between the future land use classifications. And he also said there is no supermajority vote required for eliminating that height restriction from the future land use classifications for those 4 classifications. If they separated them out, and that's, I know the planning board had that discussion about separating it out from the other issues, which do require a future land use map change.
Is there anything to prevent them from separating it out before voting?
I don't think so, but that's not the way they've proposed it to the commission. But there are 2 things that really bother me about this whole discussion. And it's the discussion we've had for years about density. People don't want sprawl. They don't like sprawl, but they don't want density either. So those are contradictory positions, and they don't seem to connect the 2. I don't understand that. The same thing is happening here with attainable housing. We talk about how awful it is. We don't have attainable housing in the city, but we're not willing to give them increased density or height to allow for it. The reason we don't have attainable housing is because land costs and residential costs are so damned high here. And until you can build buildings with more units in it and smaller units that will take care of people who work in the restaurants and who work in the retail stores downtown, we're not going to have it. It's going to be a continuing problem. And I remember when I was on the commission between 2005 and 2009, we had these same damn discussions about let's worry about, let's get affordable housing. We did not a damn thing about it because the public does not support it. They don't want increased density and they don't want increased height because they love talking about the fact that my $300,000 condo that I paid for 20 years ago now costs $1 million. They love that. That's the problem. And I think it's awful until we bite the bullet. The problem's not going to go away.
You're talking about density.
I'm talking about both height and density. I'm talking about attainable housing.
Right, okay.
And I'm
And
talking
I
about
don't know,
sprawl too.
have we as a board talked about the density topic?
No, I'm just using that as
Right,
an introduction to my comment
okay.
that this is, we're never going to have it unless we get increases in density, which they're going to propose, but also in height. 10 stories is not a big building. But we have this knee-jerk reaction all the time. We bemoaned the problem, but we are unwilling to do anything to fix it.
I'm not.
So if it's, again, I appreciate what you're saying, density and housing is a good goal. I mean, I have a voting record supporting that on the planning board too. What has surprised me is this throwing increased height in downtown into a well-publicized attainable housing comp plan change. You know, to the point where, like I pointed out, it was not even included in the presentations made at the community workshop. If you look at the slides of that, there was nothing in there, therefore there's no question. So the point is, it's how do we have a discussion about the height
changes in
change?
height at this point.
But people in downtown, height is contrary to what a couple of current planning board members are saying. Height in itself is not just like any other planning attribute. Height affects the restorative nature of the city. We just had a complete workshop on this topic and 3 days of dialogue where view corridors is an important aspect. And that was one reason why I understood why the height limits were kept in the comp plan. Changes have been made. The Rosemary overlay
David just
district.
explained to you why it was there.
Yes, and it's been kept in there because the RRA2, which gives added height, had to go through a comp plan change to add that in there. So getting a comp plan change to add more density, add more height in terms of an overlay is, we have a downtown overlay, we could do that too. So
That's not what they're proposing though.
I know, so
That's not what they're proposing. And that's what I'm encouraging us to talk about, is what's in front of us, not what we think might happen 6 months or a year from now.
What about this? He talked about Park East, which is sort of a troubled area. When I was at CCNA, it was always part of the discussion. And he's talking about changing the zoning there for quadplexes, duplexes, that sort of thing. I think that could accomplish somewhat affordable housing. You know, I'm not an expert, obviously, with that, but at the end of the day, that could help a little.
and those are the things that were being encouraged, and
Yes.
all of those other changes outside of the downtown core, I think are fully supported, and that's what the planning board was trying to do, was find a way to bifurcate so that there can at least be a series of public inputs on this important topic. I don't disagree with changing height limits, et cetera. It's just a manner in which it's been obfuscated
You're not
through the process.
proposing any change in heights at this point. So let's I mean, we're gonna look like fools if we go up to the commission and say, we object to this because you're talking about changing heights. They aren't.
But they are, he said they want to take.
Not in the comp plan.
No, they're removing the
They're
mechanism that
talking
gives
about
the
The
greater
zoning, they're
threshold.
not proposing any changes to the zoning text now. They may in the future, and we can deal with that then. But they're not proposing any changes right now.
It'll be too late
That's
to
true.
deal with it then.
It will not.
It'll absolutely be too
It
late.
will not, Michael.
Okay, so what to do? We have this coming up on the 16th. I don't see how, I mean, what we're talking about is, do we want to safeguard, so as to speak, with it being in the comp plan? Or are we gonna go with good faith, future efforts down the road? I don't see how we can, knowing what we know now, remove it, recommend it be removed, or going along, whatever the word is, with it being removed from the comp. Comments from others, please. You've seen the draft motion that we circulated with that kind of a one pager on the situation. I hear what Steve said, Ken is saying. I personally would be way okay with quite a bit more density. But as far as the box goes, that's what's at the quality of our city, the skyline, or differentiation. That's the holy grail, so to speak. So, and I'm okay with some more height, even more than 3 stories. But the devil's in the detail of my fear is knowing this
Once you
commission,
start that.
knowing this
That's the
commission,
concern.
that it would be taken out of Steve's hands. And before you know it, one of the builders at the Quay, developers, is building a 42-story building in St. Peter's.
Yes.
So, other comments, please chime in.
Well, I think one of the things to address what Ken was talking about a little bit is that what's being proposed is the removal of the language about height in the comp plan. That's being removed. And our concern is that we don't know what's really going to replace that. And I think that one of the positions we ought to establish possibly is don't take that out until you can tell us what's going to be in the subsequent planning. Because that's our protection right now. That's our 4-to-1 vote protection. And do not remove our constitutional right to that that's in the comp plan now until you can further tell us what you're going to replace it with or how you're going to address the issue in the future. The second thing I'd like to say is from the downtown residents' point of view, I'm talking downtown residents. Downtown residents get conflicted about density and height for the reason that if you have a 10-story building and you have 24 units in it with 3,000 square foot units, and you then increase the density by having the same 10 stories, but now you put 4 times as many residents in there driving cars and parking, it creates a problem for the residents downtown and their quality of life. Because there's still, regardless whether you like it or not, we have a demographic here who are very dependent on their cars to get to doctor's appointments, to get to shopping experiences, to bring food in the house, go to church. Those things are mostly not in walkable distance to the downtown resident. And to just increase the density, the downtown residents won't go along with that unless you put in an infrastructure that supports their quality of life.
I think that was one of the big things that was a takeaway of the talk that was at the bookstore with Ian Black that came across very loud and clear. I guess one of the conflicts that I'm having with this whole thing is how we're grouping the building heights. To your point, we're talking about density, we're talking about affordable housing, and I get a little nervous, especially when you brought up the example of developers saying they're going to build affordable housing and then they retract after it's a done deal. And it's kind of like they're putting that in there as a teaser to justify the building height, I guess. And that does not sit well with me. And I think more of a clear definition I think, yeah, absolutely 100%. We need affordable housing. We need attainable housing to build density so that we can have those sorts of infrastructure builds within our community that people may not have to use as many cars. It is a snowball effect and it's a domino effect, but the language that's being used of attainable housing along with building heights, it does not sit well with me. And the way that that's all being served up on a platter.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think part of the problem is we're not looking at this in a comprehensive way. When I say we, I'm talking about everybody. You have density issues, you have height issues, and you have housing issues. And if you treat them as, if you don't treat them as one problem, we're never going to resolve all these issues. I mean, this is going to go on forever. We could talk about that, you know, don't allow more height. But what does that solve other than an aesthetic thing? I mean, you got to address these other issues at the same time. And I'm not saying us. I mean, who are we to tell the board what to do unless we do? But it's a much bigger problem than changing the height, changing the density. I had dinner the other night with a couple of people, and I said, well, what would you, because this came up about height. I said, what would you prefer? A little more height, a lot more height even, or urban sprawl? Do you want to be able to never get to Route 75? You know, because there's 5,000 houses between you and it. And they just sat there like, geez, we never thought about that. And that's the problem. We got to deal with all of this in a holistic way. So I don't know. It may be too late.
But Alan, I think that's exactly what Ted was talking about. There was a holistic plan called the Downtown Master Plan 2020. So it has served its day, but our current mayor had talked to us that he wanted to update that with a new Downtown Master Plan 2040. I don't know.
But
So
you just said something really
that would
scary.
have that would address all those issues. That's what the master plan does, is it talks about the transportation and everything else tied together for this specific grouping.
But what you just said is part of the problem, not that you created the problem. The 2020 plan you said was then, and now we're looking, that was a year and a half ago. You know, what changed in a year and a half? I mean,
We need a new master plan. I
well,
think.
what's wrong with the old one? At least let's give
Well,
our fighting a
update it,
chance.
update it. And if it makes sense to have greater height in certain downtown core, not downtown Bayfront, or create a new downtown core east, so everything east of Orange or something can go 20 stories or whatever, you know,
Whatever.
those are the sorts of things that are absolutely right. Those discussions should be had. So how do we get there? in this
Well,
current
I can assure you that if you lump everything together, nothing will get done.
No, the master plan will get done.
That's not what you're talking about.
Yes, I was talking about updating the
Well,
downtown master
yeah,
plan.
I know what you're talking about. You were saying, let's put all these issues together and work them out.
No,
That's not gonna happen.
whatever was in.
Whether it's in the master plan form or some other way, it's not gonna happen. Because somebody will find something wrong with some piece of it and it will all fall apart. So we need to take it step by step.
Okay,
But I'd like to call for a vote. Let's
we have the draft motion.
So I'm not making, that motion is not put on the table.
No, we don't.
Motion is not on the
I
table.
have
Not yet.
made that motion.
Okay, would you like to make that?
No, because my motion was basically about holding another community workshop, and that's not gonna happen. So to me, that's a moot point. So
I'm not understanding.
read the motion.
His motion is to do nothing until and unless.
So remove it from that and go back and do public outreach and input, and then introduce another amendment. That was what was in the motion, based on the discussion here today. I don't see that motion going forward. However, I just heard from Peter and Kathy, some discussion about tying that to the master plan. I don't know. So I don't have a motion to put on the table right now.
Peter, you brought something up. Could we, you said something that, could we somehow make a motion on that? Because I think we need to have some kind of a statement, right? We need to have a position, right? So,
Height?
well, no, not necessarily, but well, I don't know, do we? We have a May 17th coming up, are we?
On May 16th,
Or
Steve Kober is going to recommend to the commission that the comp plan table be removed from the comp plan.
Well, he's presenting what the planning board recommends. Planning board submitted recommendations. They voted and made recommendations.
Correct. So he's going to bring that forward. They could vote on that 4-1 to remove it. Our position is we want that removed from the discussion because not enough information is known, nor has there been enough community outreach. That would be my recommendation for a motion.
Peter, is that kind of what you were saying?
I would,
It
because
sounds
I think in a nutshell, what I was saying is we are not ready to make this decision. We need more information before that decision is made. So kick the can down the road on this one. Essentially. You know, until we can get some more information, don't do anything because the downtown residents are not informed well enough to make a real choice here.
Okay, so could you say that in a motion-y kind of way?
Just ask one question. I still
Peter's good
don't
at
quite
that.
get
Peter's
it.
very
What's
good
the
at that.
consequence of pulling the height restriction out of the comprehensive plan? What actually happens then?
Nothing.
Because as I understand it, the zoning code still has the restriction, right?
Nothing happens, Al.
Well, it takes a different approval process with a different approval vote.
No, David said already that that wasn't true. David said that a little while ago.
Well,
Not
he
for-
tried
not
to
for the
say
height.
this is such a minimal change, which I don't see it in that way, that it would take it out of the purview of needing a 4-1 vote. I don't agree with him on that.
Well, we're not the decision. We're not the
No, I'm not.
constitutional.
So
law
until we
experts,
get more information, I would move that the DS.
I could agree with Peter's position. I could agree with that.
Okay, can you state that?
Well, I would move that the DSCA formulate a position around delaying or recommending that more information through a workshop possibly be held before the commission takes an action on the staff's proposal.
Well, you're talking about height though, right?
No, I'm just talking about do not change the comp plan.
No, I'm not gonna go along with
Okay.
that. If you were saying that with respect to height, eliminating height from the comp plan without more information about the impact of that, the potential impact of that, I could go along with it.
I could live with that much, yes, so long as they don't remove that
Isn't
protection.
That pretty much what was, maybe that's what was in the motion. So I'll bring it back up here.
Okay,
I'm
trying to find
Let me just get the motion.
I got the packet up and I'm looking for it.
I'll put it up on the screen here.
And these old eyes having trouble on the small screen.
But let's make it simple, Peter.
Yeah, I think it can, no, I
Well,
think, yeah.
I had
simple
the
the-
whereas in there for background.
We don't
No,
need
I don't
that.
know. That was just for information. So this is, Peter, take a look what's on the screen here. Right there. So motion, is this? Is that?
You know, this isn't my decision.
No, I mean, is this kind of
That's not someplace.
just therefore the following motion is made?
If we could go with the first paragraph, I'm good with it.
Well, remove it until what?
I don't want to tell them how to give it
Well,
to
no,
us.
but, okay, but what would you want to see? And have more further public input
Can we
or
change
outreach
the
or?
second paragraph to, and we suggest that the city commission direct the staff
Let's urge.
to that second
Urge.
paragraph?
Urge.
Okay, all right.
So that would be our position, those two paragraphs, with the second one being changed to, from a declarative, you do it, to a, we would suggest that you do this.
Mhm.
We urge.
Okay, we have a motion with that minor tweak.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's unanimous. Okay, thank God. Okay.
This is what democracy is about.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So we have no new regular members, so
Old business,
so we go down now to the.
city update.
I think we just did it. I think we just did
Unless there's anybody
it.
else.
In a big way, yes. That was the shortest commission meeting I think we've had in a long time this past week, so
Yeah,
pretty mild.
president's update, I think I'll defer. I can tell you, I was on a DSA call this morning, and boy, there's record hotel occupancy, room nights, everything's kind of booming around town.
And yet they say that what do you call it, hotel's gonna be ripped down.
The Hyatt.
The Hyatt. They can make more money.
Yeah, but they're putting
They
in
can
a,
build it higher.
well, they're putting in a Hilton, a boutique, which is a little.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, that's what,
Not a kind
that's
of,
what the developer proposal includes, you know, whether that will really happen. I'm
Well,
not
we'll
sure.
see.
Seems to be similar to what you see with the Ritz Hotel condos.
Right.
Hotels on the lower floors and then comes above, is what they could build it, yeah. Right.
That's where some of our attainable housing should be located. Honestly with you.
Okay, let's move down to committee reports. Ken, what have you got, sir?
Okay, we had an Arts and Cultural Committee meeting on April 13th to discuss with Cynthia Burrell, who's one of the founders of Art in Common Places, the program and what the mission of that program is, which is to casually place art in public places. It could be nail salons, could be banks, it could be laundromats, it could be your mail room at your condo. They furnish the art. They have professional visual artists and poets who brought together to collaborate on a theme to create the artwork. The painter paints it, the poet writes, and they print this up in an 18 by 12 inch high quality broadside that they will deliver to you and change periodically. They now have about 85 locations around the city where they have these art, and it's free. They'll give it to you, and you can put it somewhere where you think you would like to have a piece of public art. So I did a summary of that discussion, and I sent it in for inclusion in the newsletter because there's information that individual condos could use if they want to participate, but it wasn't published. So how do I get something?
Okay,
Because the last 3 meetings we've had information. We've developed information that could be useful to individual condos. So how can we get that out to people?
Ken, I'll do a better job with your.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Okay. All righty, we're going to talk about Alan's proposal on your own time this month. That's it.
Jamie, on associate event.
Yes, so our event, New Technologies for Condo Associations is coming up this Tuesday. If you guys have not registered, please do so. Goes for everybody over there too. Attendance is a little on the lower end, so if you guys are interested, please register as soon as you can, so we know that you're coming.
Yeah, I'm doing some personal outreach to folks I know. I've got some city side, you know, and some less traditional kind of things. I have reached out to fellow I know in the press and see what publicity we can get. If you can,
It's
beat
Art
the
of
bushes,
Vision, yeah.
we're trying to get a turnout for
Okay.
this.
I'll see it.
It would be appreciated.
Art Ovation at 4 o'clock,
Tuesday meeting.
Tuesday, May 10th.
Now,
Thank you.
we had talked about sending out a little flash notice, news update on the EV survey with links to invitations to the event to try, you know, because at the event is one of the speakers is talking about EV installations and potentially using some of that data that came out of that survey. So the question is how to put that together in the next day and a half and get that out for the end of the week so that that could help boost at least to some target groups.
Yeah, it could be that the EV thing, we thought technology, but maybe EV's got more sex appeal right now than the other.
The other
technology.
So
Yeah.
what do you need? Like a paragraph to go into a blast email?
Well, I mean, you have your summary, but basically maybe a shorter, more newsy paragraph Then the question I had said is, well, putting some of those data into some slides or graphs that either there or we put up into the final report, So
I don't see it happening in 2 days, but he will, at the conference, he will be speaking about EVs.
Yeah.
And
maybe just a short.
Maybe just a paragraph, just saying
one graph.
If
Pull a
if
graph.
you do a paragraph, let me pull some other stuff on EVs in general and see what we can come up
Well, I
with.
mean, the whole idea was to simply focus on the survey we did.
Right.
And because that's what condos are interested in is, hey, we're hearing about this stuff. What should our board be doing?
Right.
I just had a representative from another condo in town come to visit our condos installation because these questions are being asked. And so I think that kind of is the focus in getting that out.
let me start the paragraph. Based on the survey results, something they're really comprehensive. I'm going to hand them out. A committee report, way too long to talk about, but interesting results. And let me put a paragraph together. Who should I send it to? You. Patrick.
Both those copies.
Okay.
And I'll see if I can get a graphic to go with this.
Well, in the draft.
Okay. Okay. Green space, Patrick?
No.
Okay. Homeless, Peter?
Okay, there are a number of things happening, but it's taking a lot more time to coordinate all of the stakeholders. I've become very sensitive in trying not to step on anybody's toes as we move forward with some of these things. So if it seems like we're not doing anything, we are doing some things behind the scenes, and I'll be soon able to bring back more information on a couple of things that are being discussed at this point. But the one that I'm happy to say that caused a little controversy last time was that I pushed through a motion at the board that didn't have the backup material to support it. And as a result, no, fortunately, there is a Santa Claus, Virginia, and the item did not come before the city commission before we had this meeting. So I would like to propose on the sit-lie ordinance, if it's okay, a motion that will correct that. And we provided some backup material on this agenda, three pieces of material: the draft ordinance, a position taken by the Sarasota Herald Tribune, and there was a third piece that I sent.
48's memo.
Pardon?
48's
Yeah.
memo.
Oh, Fournier's memo, which was a cautious memo to the commission about, look, if we do it this way, we will probably stay out of the court system, no guarantee, but there's a higher rate. So anyway, so what I'd like to do is I'd like to make a motion still with the sit-lie commission ordinance that will come before the city commission for a second reading. And that is, I move that the DSCA Board of Directors approve sending a letter of support and giving oral testimony at the city commission meeting when ordinance number 225413 has a second reading. Such action shall support the amendment as proposed at the April 4/22 meeting, DSCA board meeting, and the draft is attached to today's agenda. In the event that changes are made by staff to the document approved on first reading and published prior to the city commission meeting for second reading, the DSCA Board of Directors further authorizes the DSCA Executive Committee to meet to determine any action to take or comment to be made based on the second reading changes, should such reading be scheduled for approval before the next regular directors meeting of the DSCA. A letter of support regarding the action of the DSCA board will be sent to the mayor with copies to each city commissioner and each charter official. I hope that covered all bases.
We all second.
All right. Unanimous? Okay.
But I do have a question, Peter. It only provides for this ordinance to apply along Main Street from 41 to Washington.
They do
Boulevard.
define a pedestrian corridor, which is what you've just described.
Yeah.
Main Street
And
from
Palm Avenue.
Washington down
But what
to,
about Central, where the problem really is?
all right, so the staff was directed after the first reading to go back and take a look at this and see if that pedestrian activity zone should be expanded. That's why I put in this comment about if the staff brings back other language, the executive committee may determine what to do with it.
Fournier felt that doing it where he recommended, because it's adjacent to paid parking, was that there'd be a reasonable expectation of somebody paid for parking, that they could have better access and not step over somebody. So the question is,
You walked along Central Lake.
yeah, how I know that? Okay.
I think the hours were looked at being expanded too. So it's not only the parameters, but the hours.
Yeah.
So.
So I mean, the discussion at the commission meeting was to at least expand it to State Street as a pedestrian zone, and to expand it along Lemon to the bus station. And you know, they made the suggestions was to the staff to take a look at it a little more expansive ordinance.
Okay.
Motion and a
Yeah,
second.
that's it. Okay, and then we were all,
That's great.
I think we were all in.
Okay, give this. Or I sent you a copy.
Anything else, Peter?
No,
For
thank
the
you.
moment?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other than to say
Yes.
that,
The Salvation Army.
yeah,
I did
Heather,
talk
why
about
don't you
that.
go ahead and pick that one up, because you arranged the tour and it was great.
Yeah, so I did, I arranged another tour. Glenda, as some of you may know, there has been a change in the Salvation Army, and their apparent, what was put out was their acceptance and how they're gonna make changes to people coming in that are not applicators, could be no more free nights. I did forward you the email, I believe, to everyone. If I didn't, I will certainly get that to you, but really essentially the only thing that's changing at this point is that they're no longer gonna be providing showers or dinners to those clients that are not spending the night and paying the $12. That's basically the big change. I think the news kind of made it sound like they were just gonna be charging everybody, and there's gonna be a substantial change, and it's not, so. If you have any questions about that, let me know. I can forward them to Glenda, but I think everything is pretty much status quo for right now. I know they're very short-staffed. They're struggling.
Well, Kathy, I think, based on that, I think what the Salvation Army was saying was they weren't doing away with the $12, they weren't doing away with the free night, but they were putting a cap on it. So that, you know, that a certain number still could get in without paying the $12, but they couldn't
She
continue.
said, we still have grace nights, free nights, as clients are trying to determine the appropriate program services that best suit their next step. So they do have a grace period.
And they further went on to say, because of staffing shortages and safety needs, we are reducing the number of overnight shelter clients that pay the $12 per night.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, health and safety, COVID heat maps have stopped coming. So I had heard a rumor that the county was going to stop issuing those. I'll confirm that if it looks like they're suspended doing those, and therefore, if they restart, I would do the charts.
Sure.
No information at the moment.
One of the things I want to add to that is we had our interim police chief came to the mark and met with some people. I was not aware of it until after the fact. But what he had put out there is that he would like any condo, he would be willing to come in and talk to residents regarding any concerns that they have. So he's opening that up to other condos as well. You can set up an appointment and keep you more than willing to come in and talk to each individual condo group.
And he's no longer interim?
Yes.
I think, you know, so
Yes.
That's
A permanent, yes, I'm sorry, yes.
confirmed and so forth. Okay. Transportation, Roger is not here. I did get a little update. The trolley is apparently a roaring
Oh, I love it.
success. I mean, it's 14,000 rides so far, and they do have a clicker now, so the driver can navigate through the traffic lights with somewhat more ease.
Did Roger indicate at all whether the origin of the ride was on Lido or or the origin. I mean, it's obviously round trip, but Alito people coming here, or are we going there?
I'm given the impression that people are going both ways and that you got.
I brought it
people-
both ways and it's crowded
Well,
both
no,
ways.
for sure, you've ridden it both ways, because nobody wants to get stuck on Lido Key for the rest of their lives. But the question is, if the Lido Key people using it to come here and then back,
Yeah.
or people here using it to go there and then back, where is your point of origin? Because one of the discussions was how, you know, how much is this gonna benefit the city?
Anecdotally, I am hearing at DID meetings that there are people traveling from the islands into town for lunch or whatever.
That's,
Now,
it'd be nice to
I
get
don't know how
some
much
real
data
evidence.
they're
Yeah.
capturing, but it seems like the downtown merchants who were lukewarm about this are now kind of come on board.
That was, I'd love to see some data, but that would be encouraging.
Right, okay.
Roger, I sit on Roger's committee as well. We've also on the committee are trying to discuss with Patel from FDOT about where the crosswalks are going to be on Gulfstream and the trail.
Okay, the EV.
Yeah, I'm gonna hand these out. There's no way to talk about it. It's very long, but this is the summary and bullet points of the EV survey results. So if you could just take one and pass it along. And then read it at your leisure. There's no vote that has to be taken about it. It is what it is. Yeah, just forget about this part. Just
The summary thing?
Just do the summary.
Okay.
Is that my computer kind of died a little bit with the color. So let me just say this about, the question I have is, do we want this distributed? Obviously going to all board members right now. Do we want it distributed also to all associate members and also to all respondents in the survey and also to all members, even if they didn't respond? In other words, what should be the distribution list of this summary? Obviously, it's going to board members. Should it go only to the people who responded, or should it go to everybody that was originally sent to? Patrick, who originally got this survey?
The property managers and member reps for our member condo association, so approximately 40 member condos. So went to those, in some cases, it's only one person who's both, but we oftentimes do member rep and a property manager just to be sure that somebody receives it. And then we did follow-ups many times, as you said. Only got 7 responses for 7 ones that had installation. We had other responses.
So would it be reasonable to say, look, why don't we distribute certainly to all 40 people, even if they didn't respond? Because we did this for the benefit of all the condo members. So
I would think that even from a marketing point of view, from the DSCA, that we should send it to everyone to know this is the work that we do. This is what, so I think that they pay attention a little bit more to some of the things that come up. That would be my.
that would be my.
I'll just interject. We had fairly extensive discussion about this at the start of the survey at the board meeting. And we made some commitments to only distribute it to the 40 members and not post it on the website for some proprietary. I'd have to go back and look at the minutes.
I thought there was, and I do recall that, but I thought it was a different survey.
That was a
different
big
type of
survey on,
survey.
yeah, that was a big survey.
financials and it was regarding.
Yeah, that was that one. I don't think it was this survey.
There's nothing in
I
there
don't-
that's
not that I
proprietary.
No, that was-
Proprietary.
No, that was the other, that survey that we did.
And in fact, the actual survey that asked, who was your vendor, were you happy? All 7 people who already have installed something, named their vendor and were happy. So if anything, everyone's gonna be happy.
There's no exclusivity.
Well, again, we could take this survey, the summary here, which is heading out here, as a public summary. the survey and a more detailed extract of the survey is what we sent to. Now, as a way of linking that, what we've done in the past is we I've oftentimes taken a report or something, posted it on our public website under the issues page, like under homeless or under green space. And we posted the transportation there. Again, maybe whatever graphic, and then that is linked to from the newsletter we're talking about sending out, or a news flash. So it's a short news flash, but it has the paragraph or two, and then a link to this article. And then separately, we compile a formal survey report, part of which had the contact information of those 7 condos who said we've done it, and send that just to our condo member. That we.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Okay.
If there could be a link to the actual survey, and Patrick can just eliminate, there's some stuff in there that's sort of garbage in the sense of, you know, it doesn't really pertain to the, like, it's got codes in there. And maybe that could just be cleaned up and the link go right to the survey. And you can see graphically everything that happened. Yeah.
Okay. Zoning, we kind of talked about, right? Ted, anything CCNA? Oh, sorry, Bob, on the Bay.
Just really briefly, they had their board meeting, and I just wanted to give you the number of how much money they raised. 50 million. They have 70% of that is cash, and 30% of that is firm commitments, like things like the Patterson Foundation, and there are various funding foundations around this. And the other little tidbit is the Sunset Pier. They believe that will be completed within 18 to 24 months.
Really?
Yeah.
So they received state approval?
No, they still need federal, but the number that it may take 18 to 24 months before they go over. This has to go with the federal government.
So they had not received any approval?
No,
It's an Army Corps and all that.
it's the Army Corps of Engineers.
Oh, it's Army Corps, it's not.
Yeah, and you had his office to volunteer or offer to try to help.
Bob, did they participate in the giving challenges here? I thought I saw that.
And they had the giving challenge last week, and they raised about $250,000
That's awesome.
in 24 hours. Noon to
And I can add to this, the TIF inflows were about 3 million versus forecast of 2. So 50% increase, and that's going to be the gift that keeps giving because of zero basis.
Skyrocket was quite enormous careers in the Hyatt developments.
Right, and that's bondable after 5 years, so we're 2 years in it, so in 3 years. And it may be used for the park, the Performing Arts Center, or infrastructure connectivity.
and they're changed the zoning for Centennial Park so that is considered the same zoning as the main park. Which,
Part of the conservancy,
excuse me?
and Centennial Park will be part of the conservancy.
Yeah. In fact, we received here because we correctly funded, there's going to be a hearing, I don't know, this year. And there may have already been. I can't say I'm all that concerned about it, because they do want to relocate. They talk about relocating the launching site for this. Yeah.
All right, Ted, on CCNA, anything?
Yeah, pretty good. One thing that was interesting, that Steve Clover was at the CCNA meeting last month, and he talked about something called the Middle Overlay District. And to me, that becomes a real area for attainable housing that he's referencing. If you connect it transportation-wise into downtown especially, which would greatly enhance the availability of service workers into our downtown. And so maybe we want to think about, this board may want to think about the idea of having not so much attainable housing in our downtown core as in the immediate perimeter that could then take and make transportation hubs into downtown where we need the help, just as an idea. Next, also, do you want to take and put together, David, a short memo or something for me to say about our conversation with Steve at this Saturday's meeting for the CCNA regarding height restrictions and our attitude about it? Because the CCNA likes to support our positions if they know what they are.
But we have our motion.
Yeah, we have our motion and our.
Write it out.
Sign it and
Get
sign
that
it.
so you can-
Yeah, okay, all
All right,
right.
get that to me. Okay.
Okay.
Next, the other thing is that this coming meeting, that'll be this Saturday, they're having the county administrator, Jonathan Lewis, as well as city manager Marlon Brown, talking about the penny tax. And we haven't had an awful lot of discussion about that. That should be interesting. And the last issue was, just a second. They are having on the 11th of June, at the Bayfront Community Center, a candidates of the commission forum. So somewhere, do we want to have a forum for the candidates as well?
Well, the question is, would we have that before or after the primary? What, has there been a past?
Yeah, Peter's led much of those. We've done.
We've done it
2017 was the
both
last.
ways. Back one year, we did it both ways, in the same election period. We had the primary candidates forum, and then we had, the general election forum. So I was going to bring that up and comment that I didn't bring it up in new business, but I did, that's the five, candidates that have, I don't know, Mike, you may know, is there any more than 5 anymore? For city commission?
No, there's me, Fred, and Hagan are running for the District 2 seat, and just
That's for the county.
Mark Hawkins.
Yeah, that's for the county board. This is, I think, we've been talking about the city. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said county.
I mean, we can take a look and see what it takes to do a candidates forum and when to do it.
I guess my 2 cents would be, if everybody else is doing these forums, do we wait until the general? In September-ish.
Given our planning capacity, I think that would probably be a better.
Yeah.
And we usually partner with somebody, like last time we partnered with DSA.
That's 2 or 3. Yeah. So, but that would be, we just get it on the calendar and figure out, okay, you want to do this in July, August, September, and just we got the events calendar coming up, our discussion next week. Let's figure out, we have a recommendation when that ideally would be best done. Okay.
All right. Is that it then? Okay. Rosemary, the 3 park designs are being distilled into 1 or 1.5, and we anticipate that at any time. Met with Jerry Fogel and Candy Peterson last week. Their intention is to try and get that after final resident input. One lady, if I tell you the story, she came up to me and she said, "Well, don't forget the service, just build the damn park." So we're trying to walk the line between surveying people to death. And, I think we're coming up with something that most people are going to really like, try and get it cost. And Jerry Fogel was trying to talk about doing something off this budget cycle with the county with some encouraging news. On Boulevard of the Arts and 10th Streetscape, they are proceeding with concepts for those that they hope to unveil on May 23rd. They're going to do a workshop with them. So I hope to have more news on that. They're applying for federal grants. We hope that somehow can make its way into FY23 budget. That would be terrific. That's all we've got on Rosemary. And Jamie.
Yeah, Chris is not here, so.
Okay.
I think we have a couple of members here. We're here and 1 online, so I think Terry's still here. Okay, Terry, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hi, Terry.
Hi. Hello. How's everyone? Very interesting meeting, very lively today. Lots of good.
Company?
Yes. So we are Socotech Engineering, formerly Forge Engineering, a family-owned business out of Naples for 26 years. And at the end of last year, in September, we merged with Socotech. So we are a full engineering firm, full staff. We can do reserve turnover studies, any water intrusion, any building maintenance that you need, concrete issues, seawalls, parking lots, planters. We do it all, and we consult for free. So we can come out, send an engineer out, set a proposal for you. We do all the specs, we do the docs, and we follow the project through kind of like an owner's representative, making sure that the contractors, the vetted contractors that we send the bids out to, and you come back and the board makes a decision, and we follow through and make sure that they do the proper work that you are paying for. So that's us with Socotech. Thank you.
Call it back.
All right, next we have Brandon.
Hey, I'm Brandon. I'm from the local franchise of Surpro. We're here in North Sarasota, so we're right off the middle of the interstate. And it is that time of year. No one ever wants to talk about it, but it's hurricane season. It's coming around. My biggest push is we're renewing all of our vendor agreements and stuff. So the way that it works in Surpro is if a storm does hit, corporate actually sends hundreds of teams to the site before the storm actually hits. That way, when it hits, we say we can roll right in. And the way that we're kind of formulating it now is if we have a vendor agreement in place already, it's just an agreement of service. It's not a contract. It's not binding, but it just says that we're a restoration company or a vendor for your complex. They get priority over crews. So if we have a vendor agreement with you guys and the calls start coming in, we usually get about 100 calls an hour during hurricane events. Right after a hurricane event, we usually get about 100 an hour. Surpro dispatches those teams and they get with their local office, which would be us here. Say, okay, who do you have contracts with? Who are your first partners? We say these people, and then we start sending teams to their properties first. There's no vendor agreement in place. It's on the first come, first served basis. So if you guys have any questions, just reach out. Surpro, North Sarasota. There is a South Sarasota location, but we are the North franchise. So make sure you reach out to me specifically or mine. And I can get you a copy of that vendor agreement just so you can look over it, present it to the board, or present it to whoever really needs to make the decision to sign off on it. So.
And you'll clean the floor.
So we've been talking. So she's in the process of this now. Hurricane season is coming, and we do a complimentary tile or carpet cleaning for common areas and stuff like that. So we do that twice a year for you. So if you come in a place like this, we would clean your tiles, clean your carpets. We know that everyone's got to get those done at one point. No one really likes to go out for bids. And so you call us up and you say, hey, I'm from so-and-so. I want to get my tile, my carpet clean. And we'll come on in, we'll schedule, and we'll get it done for you.
Bob, what's your elevation above sea level there?
Excuse me?
How far is the floor above sea level?
Across the
here?
street.
We're sitting at 17 feet.
Oh,
Right here.
that's another way they do our.
Yeah, I think last year it surged to 24, or not last year, 2 years ago.
Yeah, some earlier, but they're gone.
24 feet.
Okay. Any final comments? We're running a little bit over. Anybody trying to make a final comment?
Never negotiated.
Our next meeting will be June 1st, same time, same place. And with that said, time for some wine. We're adjourned.